Hi everyone, welcome to Wednesday Sound Bytes here at the Proactive Business Network. I'm Jimmy Young and I'm very proud to have a couple of old friends and a new friend in with us here on Wednesday to talk about a book that they both co-authored about the Boston College hockey team. And it's called Tales from the Boston College Hockey Locker Room by Tom Burke and Reid Oslin. And thank both you guys for coming in. I really appreciate it on a Wednesday afternoon.
Great to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and of course, Reid, you are a longtime sports information director at Boston College.
Yes, sir, about 25 years.
That's a long time, okay? And we go back quite a ways as we were comparing here, and it's great to see you again.
Good to be back.
And Tom, as co-author of this book, how did this come about? How did you decide to go ahead and move forward with this project?
Well, my sport has been hockey for many years. I started back covering college hockey for the Hockey News when I was at BC, and I've been with it ever since. And Reid decided he could use a helping hand on this, so why don't we just co-author it? And here we were. We had a ball doing it, and I'm so happy to have been a part of it.
When was it published?
It came out this past October of 2014.
Okay, good.
And it took about a year of putting it together, the research and interviews and so forth. But it came out and it's been received very, very well.
And I received it very well too, I might add. I read this book and enjoyed it because as someone who grew up in the Newton area and knew of Boston College hockey from McHugh Forum, from Len Siglarski, from Snooks Kelly, all those great names, I really enjoyed learning more about them because I was a student of the game for a while, but really recently I've become a fan again, and this kind of tied together a lot of things that I didn't know. And you guys said it was a lot of fun doing it. One of the things that I found in it, Reid, was obviously a lot of the photos come right from the media relations department, and you probably had access to some pretty good photos, I'm guessing.
We did, thanks to the Media Relations Department and the University Archives. They provided a lot. You talk about coming from Newton. Of course, years ago, almost all of BC's student body, including, of course, the hockey players, came right from the general area of Chestnut Hill. And I talked to a number of players who learned how to skate on the Charles River in Newton, if you can imagine that. I don't know if I'd do that today, but that's where they learned the game and then brought it to the college level later on.
Yeah, and of course, you know, that's when the Charles River froze every winter before global warming and before we had a winter like this one, which obviously was too much snow to skate on because you'd have to shovel it. That's what I liked about it. It's a local. There's a Walpole connection too here. Joe Morgan, the former manager of the Red Sox, and Len Siglarski from Walpole. What did you find, Tom, as a very interesting anecdote from this book, from doing the research?
Oh boy, there were many anecdotes that didn't get in were as interesting as the ones that did. I particularly appreciated learning about a gentleman named Larry Sanford, who was with Boston College in the late 20s, and around the time of the Depression, the team's operations were curtailed for a while, and he ended up going with the national team, the U.S. national team. He played for my uncle Walter Brown over in Europe, so he took a semester off from BC for that. Come to 1932, he was selected for the Olympic team by Coach Ralph Windsor, but the BC authorities would not allow him to go to Lake Placid for 2 weeks. They had allowed him to go to Europe for a couple of months the year before that, but they wouldn't let him go to play at Lake Placid in 1932. So Coach Windsor had to scramble and find a late replacement for Larry Sanford.
That's right, and he dropped it in, Uncle Walter, and I remember now what the connection is with that too. That must have been kind of neat for you to have a guy that. It's the same Walter Brown that's up in the rafters, am I right?
That is correct. He was a hockey man, first and foremost.
Well, Boston's a hockey town. Don't tell me it's a baseball town. I hate it when people say it's a baseball town. I said, no. It's a hockey town that has a baseball team called the Red Sox. That's what makes sense to me. Do you guys agree with that?
Well, back in those days, hockey was a big sport, and all the teams played and practiced in the old Boston Arena, which now, of course, is Northeastern's Matthews Arena. Right. But the teams would practice early in the morning. They'd all be there. they would have practice games. So BC and BU might be playing at 7 o'clock in the morning. Then the guys would go out to breakfast with the loser having to pay. And then take
Would that be an NCAA violation
It
today?
probably would be now, but then they'd take the trolley and go to school for the day.
Yeah, and you know what, guys, you've lived through this too. That's when athletes played sport for the love of the game, not necessarily because mom and dad want to get a college scholarship and I'm going to bust my butt, which is kind of where we're at today. Did we like it more back in that day when it was for the love of the game?
I think when you look back, I know Len Siglarski talked about, he was one of the Walpole guys, and he used to hitchhike to school every day from Walpole and then go to practice. Sometimes it would be at night. He would have to take the last bus back to Walpole, but he did it because he loved the game. Back in those days, they asked the student athletes to play 2 sports. That's why you had a Joe Morgan who played on the hockey team and, of course, on the baseball team. You had Butch Songen, who was a great All-America hockey player, was a quarterback of the football team. He later played for the Patriots when they started back in the 1960s. They were all great athletes.
He was the original quarterback, am I right? For
Yes,
Butch?
he was, yeah. And back when the team was founded in 1960.
Yeah.
I think you found a lot of guys who were great athletes who could do almost anything, and from season to season they would change their sport. Sadly, you don't really see that anymore. Everybody plays a 12-month sport in whatever it is now.
The specialization of sport, if you will. Tom, talk a little bit about, there's a section in here, and Reid, I know you have insight on this as well, when Conti Forum was being built and the BC team for 2 years had to play on the road in the neighborhood, but on the road for a couple of years. One of the fascinating little anecdotes that I found was that originally they wanted the rink to be Olympic size, 200 by 100, but they had to settle for 10 feet less because there was a zoning issue. Am I remembering this right at all? Or what was the exact?
I think it was rocks, wasn't it?
Well, it's rocks, but Conti Forum, as it exists right now, goes to within 6 inches of the Newton line.
Yeah,
It's
you
in
didn't want to
Boston.
mess that with that. I know, right?
And if you went a little bit more, you would have had 2 towns, 2 sets of zoning regulations, and so they didn't do that. So we got a little bit smaller rink, but it's still pretty good size.
And if I remember, you mentioned hitchhiking, the '78 blizzard, the Beanpot that night. Did I hear? Do I remember that Lenny hitchhiked back to the campus? So how did they get back to campus? I guess in the middle after that storm, after those games.
The bus made it back.
The
And
bus made it
I
back.
know it for sure because I was on the bus that night. Yeah, Lenny came back, but he spent a week in his office. He found a mattress and put it on top of his desk and back in McHugh Forum and stayed there, ate in the dining hall for a few days. He was living in Holliston at the time, so it was impossible for him to travel west. So he just stayed there and
Hunkered down.
Hunkered down,
Which
exactly.
is what we did for a week, right? Luckily, I was a junior at Tufts University, and let's just say it was a lot of fun because I didn't have to go to college that particular week.
One of the things that I learned about that blizzard was that actually paved the way for Boston College to make it to the NCAA finals that year. Because they had a pretty good team, but they had some injuries. They were not playing well during February, and a whole lot of the schedule got wiped out. And then they had to make up a bunch of games afterwards, particularly against New Hampshire, which was a very good team. Had they played them at the originally scheduled time, they would not have beaten them. But they ended up making the playoffs, upsetting RPI on the road, and then Providence pulled a big upset over BU in the Garden, and BC was in the NCAA finals against Providence. But it's attributable directly to the fact that they had to take off about 2 weeks for the snow. And they could get some R&R and get their game back together again.
Certainly been a lot of talk about that blizzard of '78 this winter with February the way it was, and of course they had to postpone the final of the Beanpot again this year because of a snowstorm. But now that we've reminisced a little bit about the good old days, guys, let's talk about the good present days, because Jerry York has built an absolute wonderful program there over the years. Another guy who has roots with Boston College. How special has it been winning the amount of national championships that they've won over the last 15 years?
I think that we waited a long time. Gosh, it was almost 50 years,
Right.
and we came so close so many times. And then we won it in 2001 and just really kind of got the ball rolling from that point. But That was a big one. One of the pictures in the book is somebody holding up a sign that says, "Now I can die happy. BC has won the national championship."
It was very similar to the Red Sox waiting for a World Series for 86 years, too, because BC kept getting closer and closer, had a lot of heartbreak. Yeah. And that first one is always special, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And then to follow up with several more and have the program on such a good footing as it is right now has really been terrific for us.
And Tom, there's been so many great professionals, hockey players, that have come out of Boston College over this period of time as well. Learning about a lot of them. I mean, Brian Leach and Dave Emma immediately come to mind as two of the greats. What are some of the pros, the future pros that you found in the book that you found so interesting that you didn't know about? And of course, I'm guessing as a hockey fan you knew about them anyway. But
well, the future pros, you mean the ones who are there now?
Yeah, there you go.
There were so many guys from the NCAA era, beginning in 2001. Brian Gionta is a special case, I think, because if you remember last year, he was the captain of the Montreal Canadiens. They didn't win the Stanley Cup, unfortunately. It would have been neat to see him carrying it around. But just to imagine somebody from Boston College, the captain of the Montreal Canadiens.
Right.
And Brian actually was a guy among all the people that Jerry recruited. We were talking about how he started off first with Marty Reasoner, who was sort of the breakthrough recruit, and then some more good players came after that. There was Blake Belfay and guys like that. But Jerry said that the man who really lit the spark was Gionta. He said he was such a competitor. He made all of the good players play at such a higher level. So if there's an exceptional player of this era, it's hard to pick out one, but I would pick out Brian.
And it's interesting, Reid, I don't mean to interrupt, but you had talked about it drawing from a local community in the good old days, and now the recruitment has gone not only around the country, but Canada as well. And I thought that was really kind of fascinating.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That we spoke earlier about guys playing on the Charles River in Newton. The goaltender at Boston College now is from San Diego, California. I never even knew they had ice in San Diego, but obviously
I thought
hockey.
It was just in drinks.
Yeah, there's plenty of that in the tequila. But now players are coming from all over the country and from all over the world, really. And to have European players, to have North American players from all the states now. They don't have to be from Arlington and Newton and Walpole like they were 50 or 60 years ago.
Yeah, and yet the rivalry with the Boston City colleges, other colleges, universities, with BU, Northeastern, and Harvard, and it all culminates the first Monday in February with the Beanpot. There's nothing that compares in sport to that Beanpot because you have so much tradition amongst those four schools, national championships and rivalries. And I try to explain to people outside of Boston what the Beanpot means to win. How would you explain it, Reid?
Well, so many people who attend the four schools wind up staying in Boston or staying in New England for their careers. Sometimes they'll come from all over the country, but so many of them choose to stay in this great city. And what I think makes it special, too, is all four teams are very good hockey teams. And so it's always competitive. You never really know who's going to win. They're always favorites and underdogs and so forth, but anybody can win it any given year. And I think it's special. It's become, as Snooks Kelly used to say, it's a social must, that people will go out to dinner and make an evening of it and hope your team wins, and then you can brag about it in your office down in the financial district the next day.
Yeah, and that is what makes it so special. And I have always said that college hockey, specifically the Beanpot, is the best bargain in sport. It really is, because it's not professional, but you're seeing future professionals, and you're seeing rivalries, and you're seeing intensity, and you're seeing the college student bodies. The atmosphere is electric every year, and if you haven't been to a Beanpot, it is so much. It has to be on your bucket list, I guess, is where I'm trying to go on this.
Exactly.
Tom Burke, Reid Oslin, thank you guys so much for coming in today. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the interview. The book is Tales from Boston College Hockey's Locker Room, a collection of the greatest Eagles hockey stories ever told. For Tom Burke and Reid Oslin, I'm Jimmy Young. We'll see you next time on Wednesday's Sound Bytes.